Hello, this is Inkfy, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make a commission inquiry Google form. This is my 2021 version, and today I'm going to show you how to make one for yourself. This was requested by one of my followers on Twitter, and I figured I'd go over mine and then make a mock template on another account just to show you how that process is going to be like. Something to keep in mind is that this is a looser tutorial and this is all live in one recording. I'm new to this, so please excuse any hiccups or pauses. I have a script, but I'll also be troubleshooting any issues if needed be. Something you should keep in mind for that is that this is a tutorial for those who already have their TOS, general terms, commission samples, etc. All of that is figured out. This is showing you how to add those aforementioned elements into a Google form. This video can still be a guide for you if you're new to commissions and you're interested in this idea, but please keep in mind that I'm not going to go over what is a TOS or what are the general terms, mainly because I'll have that information linked below with a journal with all of that included. It's a pretty long one, but I go into great detail about this and how to work around it. So please check that out in the description of this video. And then lastly, I'm not a text expert by any means necessary. I just found out this method from other artists and I adjusted it to make it work for myself. I highly encourage people to at least experiment with your form and to see what works and what doesn't. I'm going to go over my completed form first, and then I'll discuss making a form from scratch. Feel free to follow my template. That's not an issue for me or anything. I just figured that if people ask the question, oh, can I use this form? I'd be like, yes, you can. You should learn from other artists. So now let's get started. First, let's look at my form. And the first few things I'm going to look at and show you here is that this is the title. You can edit this title however you want. This leads you back to the form, home. This is send. This is when you're completed your form. These three things are also important for the overall template. This is customize your theme. If I click on it, you'll notice how I have Ichigo here from Tokyo Mew Mew as my header for my redraw. This is your theme option. So I uploaded the header. I made her the header. And then from the header, what Google Forms will do, which is really cool, is that they'll take like a selection of colors that they can detect from it, and then you'll use that to kind of match the theme. So that's pretty nice. You can also choose a background color for your commission inquiry, the font style, what you want to do with that, etc. That's important for the overall template. This is your preview. Now, it will show you in the preview what the form actually looks like. If you go to responses, if I click here, you'll notice it says 0 responses. I don't have anything. You can only see this in editing mode. The people signing in your form, they can't see this. Right now it says I'm not accepting responses for the sake of this commission tutorial. I put it for here, but I can just switch it on and on whenever I want. Then it will say here, message for respondents, this form is no longer accepting responses. Make sure that is turned off when you're done collecting commissions. You can also see here that there's a view responses and sheet. Once you get commission responses, you can make a Google Sheets and download it as a PDF, which is really cool. You have an extra option here to get email notifications for new responses. If you make a separate email to make forms like this, which I highly suggest you do if you don't already have a Gmail account, make sure this response is on. If not, select the response destination or download your responses. But please keep this in mind when you're going through here. Make sure you have email notifications on so you know you're receiving form responses. Next, I'll just go over settings. Now, settings over here, it just gives you all the basic info. This is where you also want to go. This will tell you collect email addresses. If you don't want to have that option in your form, you can do that. This says requires login to work. Limit to 1 response. Respondents can edit after submit. See summary charts, text responses. I recommend keeping the last option off, but if you want people to go back and edit their commission stuff, you can keep this on. I personally keep these off because I want people to read through everything and just submit the right response. And I want people to also contact me before they submit anything. This is presentation. This says show link to submit another response after you're done. You want to keep this on. I have this checked on, but you probably want these off because there isn't really a point. Excuse me. This is a confirmation message. So if you fill in this form, this is what it's going to say. So it will say something basic like, congratulations, you fill out the form. For me, I put, thank you for completing this commission form. You should receive this confirmation email soon. And then this is quizzes. You can make this a quiz, but we're not concerned about that. I don't think you should make this a quiz because it's not. So those are the 3 settings you need to go over. But right now we're going to focus on questions. So let's start here and looking at the sidebar. Here we can have add question, import questions from another Google form if you made one already, but we're not going to use that because let's assume this is our first time making a form. Add a title and description, add image, add video. If you made a video regarding your commissions, this is also useful. Add section. Excuse me. I'll talk more about sections later, but for me personally, I don't use them because I have everything in one slide. And it seems like a lot, but when you get down to it, it's not. And that's just a preview of what I'm going to go over. So first, I'm going to talk about my form. And when you look at this, you're like, oh gosh, look at how text heavy this is. And I even had to cut some things down. But that's okay in my opinion because a commission inquiry form is to encourage potential clients to at least read your information. One of the things I like about these forms is how much of a deterrent they are for potential negative confrontations and how easy they are to set up. If I don't like a commission idea, I can just look at the form, tell the commissioner, and just delete the response manually. If I do like the idea, I can contact the commissioner and let them know. The benefits of the form is that people who potentially don't want to read or understand the terms of your commissions are kind of forced to here, because if you don't fill out the form correctly, your commission is just not accepted. It seems weird at first, but I found that I had much less bad confrontations when I used this method because I actually got people who were interested and knew what they were agreeing to before reading them. That and on to the fact that this is very easy to set up and you have a pretty good template for garnering interest for your commissions. There are potential downsides, but I'll go over everything later. Right now, let's just go over what I have so far. First is, I already went over my header. I changed it. Usually it's going to be some ugly, weird template here, which I'll show in my next tab. But you can absolutely change that as I shown there. Next, I have my title. I retitled this. You can reuse the same form over and over again. You don't have to delete a form or make a new one. You can just go back and edit your form, which is what I do. So I just changed it to Inkfy's Commission Inquiry. This is the 2021 update. So now, I'm also going to go over my first section. I have, please fill out this form to order a commission from me. I also make sure to put a notice here in this first tab that please contact me in my email before filling out the form. It helps keep things organized. Now, you may have this issue and you may be thinking, what if people fill out the form but they don't fill it out correctly? Well, we can go over these questions and make sure that there are at least some ways to kind of minimize that from happening. I just have this here so that if people have any questions about anything, they can at least go and contact me before filling out anything, and it will help keep things a bit organized. I could always delete responses if I want to in my settings, but that's just part of it. So let's look at this. Note that I did not separate my forms into actual sections. I mean, you look at here, so I have different tabs, but there isn't like section 1 or 2 of this form. If your commission form is much, much longer than this, then of course you can. But I choose personally not to. I tried to condense it already, so I just didn't bother because people still fill out the form anyway. So I'm like, what's the point? So within this first part, I also have my useful links. This is my TOS, my commission FAQ, my commission queue. You probably want some of these limited. I also have a link for samples of gallery of my work. I make sure to have a warning saying I can work with a variety of projects, but it's up to you to decide whether or not this fits for your needs to avoid dissatisfaction in the future. One of the reasons you want to have your gallery linked, especially your TOS as well, is so that people know what they're getting. I think it's always good to have a refresher for people to be like, hey, if here's an external TOS, if I don't have it in this Google form in particular, you can go read that. Or hey, here are samples of my gallery so you can refresh and see what I'm interested in. And I always keep this here, and you probably want it somewhere so people know what they're looking into. So they're not going into your commission form blind. They don't know what type of art you're going to provide for them. You could add an image technically and be like, oh, hey, here's the type of art I do provide. But at the same time, I think it's best to have a full gallery of work to show as well. And this can be from anywhere. I've seen people link their DeviantArt, people link their ArtStation, their Toy House, etc. It really depends on the person. Next, I have my general terms. It's bulky, and I have 10 points, and this is just a condensation of my TOS, but it works for me. I basically try to get everything into as condensed form as possible, so I try to make it into something recognizable. I have all my information about, okay, my TOS, what I accept, extra fees, part of my schedule, any extra stipulations, etc. You probably want to keep this as short as possible, which is why I limited it to 10 points. But you don't have to have mine. You don't have to have your commission form as long as mine. It's not necessary. It really isn't. Next is scheduling and turnaround. This is self-explanatory, but essentially I explain in this section, in order to break this up a bit, that this is how my schedule works, this is how I deliver your commission, this is how I answer inquiries to the form. I highly suggest, if you don't want to put everything into separate sections like these, at least put in your general terms how you're going to answer inquiries to your form. Like what happens next, because the commissioner isn't going to get that side of the information. They aren't going to see the responses unless you want them to. So I think it's good to say, I respond to the form via email, via social media, whatever you provide here, and I go and choose whether or not to accept your commission. But I think that's equally important, so the commissioner isn't just sending a form and being like, okay, what happens next? This is also a bit more self-explanatory, what I will or will not draw. I highly suggest having this somewhere inside your form. And the reason why is because you want commissioners to know what you're getting. You don't want to get a commission inquiry form for something that you can't do, or you don't have the skill level to do, or you just don't want to do. So I make sure I have this here. I was kind of lazy and I just took a screenshot of my card version of this and I just put it here. And you might be wondering why I don't use a table, but Google Forms is kind of iffy on that. They don't really have the option to use tables traditionally. For example, you can go to add a question if you click that plus button, and you can go to multiple choice grid, but that only kind of gives you a grid of choices to make. It doesn't really tell you what you can or cannot do with this. You can't really change the title options. I just find it doesn't work well. This could be useful for something, maybe if you have multiple commission options, but even then I wouldn't go with this. I'd probably go with multiple choice or even a checkbox, because that's just much easier to go with. And if you ever want to delete everything or anything in here, you can always go to the delete button here. So here's that. Next, I'm going to put here commercial use. And you may be wondering, okay, why do I have this here as well? Well, commercial use means that someone is generating profit from your artwork. They are buying partial rights to use your artwork to generate revenue. I think it's important, especially if you've grown over time, to have this option available so commissioners know what they're getting. So they're not going into a commission thinking that the base prices are the initial prices for commercial use. I have a chart here that showcases what is for commercial use and what people can use. I always state in the title, not for personal use, and that's something you should consider. And it's also good to have this so people aren't wasting your time. Like, I don't want to accept a commission and then find out halfway that my commissioner plans to make money from it, and they don't tell me whatsoever from the beginning. And if they don't mark it as such, like, there are other ways to get around it as well. But I always have it to have a required question, is this for commercial use, whatever, to have that evidence just in case. So with all that in mind, I already have the chart here, everything. Let's go into the actual standard questions. Now let's click on the question here. This is my standard question. This top part allows me to move it wherever I want. This is to scroll down for my question because it's kind of long. These are the options. If I want to add another option, I can type it here. If I want to add a picture, I can type it here. I can get rid of it by pressing the X button. Here it also shows you my different types of choices I can use. Short answer, paragraph, multiple choices, checkbox, drop down, a file upload. That's it. You can also put date and time as well. Now for now, this depends on what you want to do. This is very subjective, but the ones I personally use are these top 4. Short answer, paragraph, multiple choices, checkboxes, and I'll show you how. This is my multiple choice option, and this shows you what type of options I want here. And the important thing you need to know here is that this is copy, delete, and here required. You'll notice in my next section here that these have a red star. All these have red stars at the end of the question. You want that. You want that for your commission. If there's any required options, you need to make sure that this is toggled on. You see how it's green here? This toggles it off. It's white, on, required. And I highly suggest this so that people can't just fill out the form and be like, oh, I don't want to answer this question or whatever. They have to answer the question, and the form will not let them continue and submit their application until they do. And that is something good to have here. So for example, I have my accepted my terms and conditions. I verify the commission. I am purchasing 100% voluntarily, blah, blah, blah. And I can have it required, so people have to fill it out. Now, you may be asking, what about optional questions? And optional questions should be used for optional things. People not agreeing to your terms of service is not optional. Like, they need to be able to read that and know what they're signing up for. But asking whether or not you want a particular commission type or background should be optional. But keep in mind when going through that, when making your choices, it'd probably be best to make that a multiple choice or just a non-required question in general. So this is what I have required. I have most of my questions required, if not all of them. I did this so I can just condense my information better and I wouldn't have every single question like that. So after I had people agree to that, I asked them, is this for commercial use? And to make things simpler, I do this type of multiple choice trick I did when I was grading student papers when I was interning for a teacher. And one of the things I do is I put the no option first, because that's basically the option that I know most people are going to go with. They're going to go through the form. They're going to be like, bop, 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 bop. So I just put, okay, no first. Because if you know what you're getting, or if you commissioned me before, you know it's like, hey, no, this commission is for personal use only. And most people are going to go like that. So you would basically have to make the effort to put yes. And that's something I kind of like. It just makes it easier to go through the form. I was never a fan of the yes, no option. I always like no, yes, depending on the question. So that's how I go through it. So this is your name / nickname, the most important part of it. If a private commission, you'll be listed as anonymous. Again, that depends on you. Here you may notice I use the short answer section. The reason why I use the short answer section here is because the name isn't that long typically. Social media names typically aren't that long. They usually have a limit as well. So if you put a name / nickname here, you can probably answer it within here. You could put the long or paragraph section here if you want to, but I don't think that's necessary here. So again, here's the social media, Instagram, so I can notify you for updates. And this is what I like having here for Google Forms as well. You can have all these options, and there isn't really a hard limit as far as I know. So I have it here, your social media, Twitter, Instagram. I also put short answer because most social media has a limit on what you can do. Write none if you don't have one or nor wish to share. I always tell people make sure your DMs are open, because I had cases of people not having their DMs open. And then I put this here and they're like, oh, wait, I'm sorry. So in the case that people are not able to do a social media account or provide one, you should have email address. And I put email address / PayPal address if different, because I had cases which commissioners had completely different email addresses for PayPal. So I just put that there. So Google Forms is interesting in that they do work most of the time, but sometimes you have cases in which they end up in spam depending on the email. So I think it's good to at least put that notice in mind just in case, because I had cases of people where the email accidentally ended up in spam for whatever reason. So I tell people to write out the email address as accurately as possible. And I also use this option if you don't list a social media account. You should have multiple ways for your commissioner to commission you, and so that your commissioner can go and find you somewhere. If they don't provide a social media account, they should at least provide an email. And the reason why I have this is because it helps waste less of the commissioner and my time. Like if you have a certain, for example, if you have a certain issue or something and I need to contact you, then there should be a way to do that freely. And if you can't be contacted for clarification on certain elements, it's just a waste of our time. So I think it's good to have multiple outlets. So I also put this notice: if you can't be contacted, if you don't list your social media, I just drop the commission and refund the money, because there's no point if you're not even going to contact for clarification's sake. Here is where we get to the more bigger issue. How do I list my commission types? How do I do that? And this is what we do use. So this is commission types for personal use. And I put that here. And here's my short description. 2 separate orders max, extra character, full price. This is my fees. And I also put another link to my gallery here just to refresh people's minds. And here in particular, I did not use multiple choice. I used checkboxes. And why did I use that? Because checkboxes are nice, in which they allow you to select multiple options. So instead of a commissioner having to go back and fill in separate form entries, instead of that happening, you can click as many entries as you want and you set that limit. So for example, scrolling bottom here, I have select at most 2. You can select at least, select exactly, and select at most. I put select as most because that's the most amount of the most amount of commission types a person can get. So I put 2. You could be any number here depending on the amount of orders you have listed here. You may not submit more than 2 commission orders. That is how I have it set up, and that is the notice that will give you. And to have these options available, make sure to press description and response validation. Make sure those 2 are open. And this is only for checkbox. You don't necessarily have to put that there, but I always say make sure you have the description on so you can always see these for all of these. Usually it is on, but just showing you just in case. So here I have colored sketches, icons, headshots, chibi, bus shots, etc. So, I found the typo. I'm just gonna edit that quietly. But one thing you should keep in mind when going through these is that these images look kind of small so far, and you're like, why are they so small here? Don't worry, that's just how Google attaches images to things. For some strange reason, they look very small in the editing mode, but if you go and preview it, it looks much bigger. So I were to click on the question, I can put that. This is to X out of that. There will usually be an option to add an image here. Do not click this image button, it'll just add a different image entirely. Use the one here. Next is character name. This is for the commissioner's template. This is the character name. What's the name of the character? I put the short answer text because usually these aren't long. Character designer. This is where the commissioner can tell me where the commission is from, if they're the artist or if they're from another game, LN, etc. I have all these questions stacked upon each other, and I can move them wherever I want when you see this 4-directional arrow. Character personalities and traits. Give me an idea of your characters, few words or less. The background. And the reason why I have these options here, now I can show you this here, is so people can choose for themselves what they want, but also so that it helps clarify certain elements of your commission. I think ultimately a Google form is helping you to clarify elements of your commission and to break down what the commissioner wants. And I think this is where it's extremely helpful in this category. And the reason why is because it's good to know what you want. And sometimes if you have all of your information just condensed into one single paragraph, it's harder to determine what people want. And I think it's good to have these options so there is an available idea filtering system, as I call it. And that's what Google Forms are really helpful for. So I have here for background, for example, I'll use this to explain it. I have it described in the next section more detail. You may have to pay a fee depending what it is. But I put none, transparent, free, simple, free, blah, 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 this. You could just add the fees, for example, next to it, but that depends on the commission. Keep in mind, this is just an inquiry form. We're not asking people for every single detail. We're just helping to filter out their ideas and to make sure that this is what they want. Next, I have the long answer text, and I use it here specifically for a description of commissions. If you need to explain anything, you need to go and explain your commission in further detail, this is where you can. For commercial commissions, if it's a bigger project, usually we'll discuss that via email, but if anyone needs to describe the project in bigger detail, you should probably have a section just for that. Before I added all this, I usually just had this as the description and it worked out fine, but make sure you're in paragraph mode when you're doing this, and I highly recommend making this required as well. Now this is reference images links. Now, for me personally, I don't accept text-only commissions. So I tell people leave image links here, and I need to warn people how Google Forms works is that it will kind of combine or mesh together links if they're not separated by a space. And it's a bit harder to read, so I highly recommend telling people to at least have the commissioner separate each link with a space, and to make sure to test them so that they work. So that's something you should keep in mind as well. Google Forms tend to kind of mesh that together, and it's kind of weird, so I have to tell people leave a space so I can read the link more easily. Personally, for me, I have a section, should I stick to left, play around, and all these, as you can see, I use the multiple choice section. And the best part about this section for Google Forms is that you can use multiple types of choices for multiple questions, and it can be the same one, and it will still work the same function. And that's something I always liked about this. And as you scroll down, you can see these are the remaining options I have. Is it a private commission? Do you have a deadline? This is for speed paints. And here's the last final question we'll discuss here. Did you go over everything? And I have make sure everything is correct. Once you submit it, that's it. I highly, highly, highly suggest having a question like this where you just click yes. Why? Because it will help be a deterrent for people who don't read. Because if you don't click that, you basically have to go through this form all over again. And while it will save your answers, it won't submit your form until you submit all the answers that are required with the red star here. So that once you submit that, that's it. And I put yes, and that'll be it. So now, since I've gone over everything in regards to that, let's take a look at the preview of this form. So for the sake of this video, I'm going to turn on accepting responses. And once this is turned on, make sure it is, go to preview. Now, if you look at preview, things look a little bit different, but they look pretty accurate to our form. Keep in mind I'm zoomed out a little bit, so you are able to see this a bit better instead of it being closed together like this. But as you look here, you can see all the links work. My email's here. Any links are going to be highlighted, so it'll be easy to use. Everything looks about the same, just a bit more condensed. And the red star will say required here, so the commissioner will know that anything for red star is required. So now we have scheduling commission turnaround. This is here. And you can see where things work and where things are not working. For example, I put scheduled here, so I probably go back and erase that because it's not really necessary. I had that for the sake of the template when it was originally part of this one singular tab. But again, you don't really need that. And if I scroll down here, everything looks about the same here. Just keep in mind the spacing. It's going to look a little bit weird like this. You can adjust that a little bit. And then as I go through, all these questions are here. Everything's listed. And before I skip anything, this is what it looks like. All the links work. Make sure to test them out that your links work as well. And as I showed you beforehand, remember how I told you the pictures look very small here? Well, if you go through this, now they look a little bit bigger. They give you a little bit more insight to what you want. Not by that much, but again, this is just to show you that it's not always what it seems. And I'll probably change a couple of these to be a little bit bigger to reflect more of this. But the whole point is to show the commissioner what you're getting. I personally made one combined image with all of these images to show off because sadly, if you go back to our template and our questions and we scroll back down to the commission options, when you add an image to a description of a checkbox, it only allows you to add one, as far as I know. You cannot add anything else. It won't let you. So I think it's good if you have already made commission assets that this form can be extremely helpful because then you can have everything just combined as one image and just put it there. But keep in mind the more elements you add, the smaller it's going to get and the harder it's going to be to read in the original form. And as you can see, everything here looks fine. And if it looks fine to your liking, you can go and press send in your original form. And when you press send, you can either send a singular link via an email, or if you want to, go to responses, click accept responses, and you can turn this with a flick of a button whenever you want. And this is just a preview of what it's going to look like when the commissioner fills it out. You can't really submit this form, but this is just to give an idea. So if you like what you like, you'll find it here. If there's something you need to change quickly, oh, what do? I need to edit it. You can go back to edit this form, and it will bring you back to that page, and no problem. So next, I'm going to go over how to make your own commission form from scratch. So here, I went to Google Forms. I'm on an alternative email, the same profile picture and everything. I haven't touched anything with this. I just chose the first template I saw. Same as we saw, questions, responses. For the sake of this, let's turn the responses off as we've shown here. First, let's just go over our template. I changed the title. You can change the title in the top left corner as well. Next, we are going to go to our customize theme. This is our header image. We can change that whenever we want. I'm just going to change it to orange. As you can see, it fits more of that theme as well. If we don't want a header image, we can always take that out. We can choose another image if we want. And let's say you make a mistake. You're like, oh, I didn't want that. if you click these three buttons, we can press undo and it will give us back that header. So for the sake of this, let's just keep our header here. Now let's go to contact information. Let's say that I don't really want this or anything like that. Let's say it's not really adding anything, not really doing much of anything. We can technically get rid of it, but we'd have to kind of mess around with the template a little bit, which is why I say that it's probably best to start out with a blank version. A template is very good if you don't know what you're doing and you just want to start, but sometimes a template is very helpful in these cases because you can see what you need to edit and you can see what works and what doesn't. And if I want this, I can keep it. So for the sake of this, let's keep it. Let's call it commission inquiry template. It has a description. So I'm just going to pretend, let's put our TOS. Let's say we put our general terms. These are going to be much longer, obviously. And let's say we put our schedule. You can put all of that in there. Keep in mind there's kind of a limit you can put there before the commissioner has to scroll through it, but typically you can always check and preview the form if you need to. Now this is name. We can put name/nickname. Once again, this is automatically going to be on short answer text, but you can put whatever you want. Remember that if you want to make a small description to this, you go to these three little dots in the bottom right corner, click description, voila. So I'm going to put write your name. Now let's say I want to add an image after this. Let's say I want to add an image to showcase something pretty. Let's look here and we can go to add image. I don't have anything uploaded, but if you do have something here, you can go browse your files, click on your image, upload it, and it will show you there. We can also add another section by adding title and description. And this will just automatically add a title description for you. I would not use this to make new questions. I would instead use this to add any additional info or to separate sections. So let's say you want to make a separate section before you make your commission inquiry template. Let's say you add all this, you want to make a new section. Let's go to add section. Whatever you clicked on recently, that's what we'll make the section of. So this is all section 2. This is how I divided it. And this is all section 1. It says section of 1 of 2. That is the first page. Section 2 of 2 is going to be all of this. So make sure to click in between of where you want. So for example, depending on the title, let's say I want a section in between email and here. We're going to put add section. And now we have a section between the email address, phone number, what we have here, in the first part. Once again, if you want to undo, 3 little buttons here on the right top corner, undo. So I'm going to, for the sake of this template, I'm going to add a section after the commission template inquiry. Let's say I want to add a question here. So we're going to go to the top button here where it says add a question. Let's say a question is going to be, well, not a question, but I guess a disclaimer is like, do you agree to the terms and conditions? Or I agree to the terms and conditions. And you could put blah, 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 whatever, write your questions. So here it has checkboxes automatically put here, but I suggest multiple choice. And I'm going to say put yes, I agree. Make sure again that it is set on required. Keep in mind that unless you put it yourself on the first part of the section, it will not be required. Most of the time, for certain templates, they do have required questions, but I highly suggest making sure that the red star is on. For example, the red star is on here, it shows required, but if it's not here on the template, it means it's not. So for the sake of this, let's just put required, required. And it kind of shows you how easy and simple it is to set these up and how you're able to make different sections if you don't want everything on one long continuous page like I do. And we can make other untitled sections as well if we want to, like this could be part 2. And you could put commission form. And then you could be part 1, commission inquiry. And then you could be TOS / scheduling. So here we now have our different sections, the way we can set it up. We can make multiple sections within a section as well. Let's say I go to nickname, email. Let's say I wanted to have something in between this as well. Make sure to click on the top one above where you want your section to be. As I said, add section, 3 of 3. There we go. Now we have multiple sections for where we want to add all of our info. So we have part 1, which is commission inquiry and TOS scheduling. I'll just put part 1 here. Then we have part 2. And let's say part 3 is personal info. Again, there's a lot you can do with this. There isn't just one way to go about it. And that's the cool part about Google Forms in general. There's a lot you can experiment and mess around with. And there are many ways you can input that information that's digestible for commissioners. So overall, I just wanted to show you how you're able to do this and how there are multiple different ways you can tackle this as well. I hope this was somewhat helpful as a live tutorial on how I do this. My commission inquiry form, I always go back and edit it whenever I want to. And keep in mind you can do the same for yours as well. The best part about it being a Google form is that you can save all the changes anytime. So if I ever want to open up a new tab, go to, I want to correct this again, I can always do that. And that's the cool part about this. You can easily go back in there and change it whenever you want. Yeah, so I hope this was helpful to someone. And I hope after going through all these forms, I found a way to help you set up your own form and to go over all these mechanics. I didn't go over every single one because I only went over the ones that I thought would be helpful for commissioners. But if you find different ways to go through these and to make your own methods to your madness, then I'm sure you'll figure out something. So overall, that's it, and that's all I have for today. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have a good day. Bye-bye.